Centennial woke up slowly, like most small American towns where every day is like the one before. Morning fog hung over Main Street, and the first rays of sun lit up the signs of local shops and cafes. The population of 18,000 lived a quiet life where everyone knew each other, and the hottest news was discussed in line at the post office or over coffee at Mary's Diner. Stephen Allen turned off his alarm clock a second before it was supposed to ring. It was a habit he had developed over years of working at the Colorado steel plant. At 36, he was a man of strict routine. Up at 5 in the morning, shower, coffee, drive to work. His wife Dana was still asleep, turned away from him. Her chestnut hair was scattered across the pillow, and faint wrinkles of fatigue had settled in the corners of her eyes. "Dana, get up. Your shift starts at 7, Stephen said quietly, adjusting his shirt collar. She mumbled something unintelligible without opening her eyes. In 8 years of marriage, mornings like this had become the norm. Stephen no longer tried to wake her gently or kiss her before leaving. Functionality had replaced romance. The small house on Maple Street was always quiet, too quiet for a couple who had once planned to have children. But plans have a way of changing, and dreams have a way of shattering against everyday reality. The Centennial General Hospital greeted Dana with the familiar smell of disinfectant and the sounds of medical equipment. At 34, she was one of the most experienced nurses in the therapy department. Her colleagues respected her professionalism, but few knew about the loneliness she felt at home. "Good morning, Dana," said head nurse Joan, a woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes. "We're fully booked today. There's a new patient in room 7 with suspected pneumonia." Dana nodded as she put on her white coat. Work was her escape from thoughts of how little attention her husband paid to her. Stefan came home tired, ate dinner in silence, watched the news, and went to bed. He avoided talking about their relationship, believing that stability was happiness. On the other side of town, at Allen Brothers Auto Service, Eli Allen lay under the hood of an old Ford, trying to figure out a problem with the engine. At 29, he looked older than his age. His job as a mechanic had left its mark: calloused hands, perpetually dirty fingernails, and the smell of motor oil that was impossible to wash off completely. The auto repair shop belonged to both brothers, but Stefan had long since handed over management to Eli, focusing on his career as a manager. Eli didn't mind. He understood machines better than people. Metal and oil were predictable, unlike human relationships. "Hey, Eli, can you take a look at my car?" he heard a familiar voice say. A head with dark hair and tired eyes appeared from under the hood. Dana Allen stood in the workshop doorway, still in her nurse's uniform. Eli felt a familiar tightness in his chest, a reaction he had been trying to ignore for several months. "What's wrong with it?" he asked, wiping his hands on his overalls. "Strange noises when I started. Stefan said you'd take a look." Of course, Stefan. His older brother was always busy with more important things. Eli nodded and headed for her car, a blue sedan about 5 years old. "When did it start?" he asked, getting behind the wheel. "A couple of days ago. It's especially noticeable after work." Eli started the engine. Sure enough, there was an unpleasant grinding noise. "The starter's going out. It's not cheap, but you can't go anywhere without it." Dana moved closer, and Eli caught the scent of her perfume mixed with the smell of the hospital. She looked tired but still attractive. He had always thought his brother was lucky to have her. "How much will it cost?" she asked. "For family, it's cost price. Don't worry about it." Their eyes met for a second longer than was necessary for a casual conversation. Dana was the first to look away. "Thanks. You're always so helpful." Her voice sounded grateful, but Eli heard something else. A loneliness he knew well. That evening, the Allen family gathered for dinner for the first time in 2 weeks. Stefan came home on time, which was an event in itself. Dana had made his favorite casserole, and Eli stopped by to discuss the auto repair shop. "How's it going at the factory?" Dana asked, setting the food on the table. "Same as usual. Got a new order from Denver, so I'll have to work overtime," Stefan replied without looking up from his phone. Eli watched the scene and felt annoyed. His sister-in-law deserved more attention. She was a smart, caring woman who was clearly withering away in this marriage. "How's work, Dana?" he asked. She looked at him in surprise. Questions like that were rarely asked in their house. It's difficult. Lots of patients, not enough staff. Sometimes it feels like nobody cares. Why complain? You have a stable job, Stefan interrupted, still staring at his phone. An awkward silence ensued. Eli saw Dana press her lips together, holding back her emotions. He wanted to say something, but he knew it wasn't his place to interfere in his brother's relationship. Eli will fix your car tomorrow, Stefan said, finally putting down his phone. I hope it won't be too expensive. I told you whatever it costs, Eli replied. Okay, I have some work to do at home, so you guys finish up without me. Stefan got up and headed for his office. Dana remained seated at the table, slowly stirring her cooling meal. He wasn't always like this, she said quietly, as if apologizing. I know, Eli replied. Work eats people up. Sometimes I feel like I've become invisible in my own home. The words hung in the air. Eli didn't know how to respond. He understood her feelings better than he wanted to admit. Maybe you two should talk? Go somewhere together? Dana smiled bitterly. Stefan doesn't have time to talk. He has work, plans, goals, and I'm just part of the furniture. Eli looked at her and saw the pain she was trying to hide. At that moment, something changed between them. An invisible line had been crossed, though neither of them realized it yet. You're not invisible, he said quietly. He just doesn't know how to show it. Dana looked up at him, her eyes full of gratitude and something else that made Eli's heart beat faster. Thank you for listening. They sat in silence, listening to the sounds of the television coming from Stefan's study. It was an ordinary evening in an ordinary family, but something had changed forever. The seeds of future tragedy were sown on that quiet evening in Centennial, when two lonely people found understanding in each other. When Eli left, Dana walked him to the door. As she said goodbye, she touched his hand, lightly, almost accidentally, but for both of them, that touch meant more than they were willing to admit. 2 weeks had passed since the evening when Dana and Eli had their first real conversation. During that time, something invisible had changed in their interaction. Dana began to drop by the auto repair shop more often under various pretexts, to check on the progress of her car repairs, to ask for advice about a strange noise in the engine, or just to bring coffee for the whole team, even though Eli was the only one working in the shop. Car trouble again? He asked when she appeared at the door of the repair shop. Dana smiled. For the first time in a long time, her smile was genuine. Actually, no, I just wanted to thank you for the repairs. Ted runs like new. She handed him a paper cup of coffee from Mary's diner. Their fingers touched as they exchanged the cups, and they both felt a familiar spark. This is too much, Eli said, but he took the coffee. You helped me, and I'm helping you. It's only fair. They stood in the workshop, surrounded by the smell of oil and metal, but something completely different hung between them. Dana noticed how Eli looked at her, not as his brother's wife, but as a woman. The attention was exhilarating after months of Stefan's indifference. How are things at home? Eli asked, taking a sip of coffee. Dana sighed. Things at home were the same as always. Nothing. Stefan worked late, came home tired and silent. Their conversations were limited to discussing bills and household chores. Physical intimacy had become rare, and emotional intimacy had disappeared altogether. You know, sometimes I think he married me for convenience. I cook, I clean, I don't cause any problems. The perfect wife on paper. That's not true, Eli objected. Stefan has always been like that, even as a child, focused on goals, not people. You're different, Dana said quietly. Their eyes met and tension hung in the air. Eli put his coffee on the workbench and took a step back. Dana, I know, she interrupted. It's wrong, but I can't stop thinking about that night when you listened to me, when someone finally saw me. The next few days were a test for both of them. Dana caught herself thinking about Eli at work. His attentive eyes, his ability to listen without interrupting, his hands, strong and gentle at the same time. She imagined what it would be like if those hands touched her on purpose. Eli was also struggling with himself. He increased his alcohol intake in the evenings, trying to drown out thoughts of his sister-in-law, but drinking only intensified his desire. He began avoiding family dinners, making excuses about work or meeting friends. The turning point came on a rainy Thursday. Dana finished her shift and discovered that her car wouldn't start. The auto repair shop was closed, but she knew where Eli hid his spare keys. He often worked late when he couldn't sleep. She found him in the workshop, bent over the engine of his motorcycle. An almost empty bottle of whiskey stood nearby. "Eli?" He looked up, and she saw the pain in his eyes. "Dana, what are you doing here?" "My car broke down, but that doesn't matter. What's going on?" He straightened up, swaying. The alcohol loosened his tongue. "I can't take it anymore. These thoughts about you, it's killing me." Dana moved closer to him. Rain drummed on the workshop roof, creating an intimate atmosphere of isolation from the outside world. "Me too," she whispered. "It's wrong. He's my brother." "I know, but I only feel alive when I'm with you." Eli looked at her, struggling with his inner conflict. Alcohol, loneliness, and months of suppressed desire got the better of him. He stepped toward her and gently touched her face. "If we do this, there's no turning back." "I know," Dana whispered and stood on tiptoe. Their first kiss was desperate and hungry. Months of emotional starvation poured into this intimacy. Dana could taste the whiskey on his lips and didn't think about the consequences. For the first time in a long time, she felt desired. They made love right there in the workshop, on the old sofa in the corner. It was awkward and passionate at the same time. Dana clung to Eli as if he were a lifeline in the ocean of her loneliness. He kissed her with a tenderness she had been so lacking at home. Afterward, they lay in silence, listening to the rain. Reality began to return, bringing with it a sense of guilt. "What have we done?" whispered Eli. "What had to happen," replied Dana, pressing herself against his chest. Stefan won't find out if we're careful." Thus began their secret affair. Meetings in the workshop after work, stolen kisses when Stefan was busy. They justified their actions by telling themselves that they weren't hurting anyone because Stefan didn't even notice any changes in his wife's behavior. Dana blossomed. Her colleagues at the hospital noticed that she had become happier and more confident. She began to pay more attention to her appearance and bought new lingerie, although Stefan didn't notice, but Eli did, and his admiration gave her strength. Eli also changed. He began to drink less and take better care of himself. His job at the auto repair shop was going well. Now he had an incentive to look good for their dates. But secrets have a way of poisoning relationships. Dana began to lie to her husband regularly. She made excuses about being late for work, meeting friends, and going shopping, all to cover up the time she spent with Eli. Lying became easier and easier, which frightened her. Eli felt guilty towards his brother. Stefan trusted him, shared his plans, and consulted him on business matters. And he betrayed that trust in the most despicable way. "We have to stop this," he said one day after a particularly passionate encounter. "Why?" Dana hugged him from behind while he was getting dressed. "Because it's destroying me from the inside. I can't look my brother in the eye." "Then don't. Look at me." She turned him toward her and kissed him. In that kiss was a plea not to leave her alone with the emptiness of their marriage. "Dana, there are things you need to know about me," Eli began seriously. "What?" He hesitated. His past wasn't exactly spotless. Alcohol problems, fights, several arrests for disorderly conduct in his youth. But Dana stopped him. "The past doesn't matter. All that matters is what's happening between us now." "What if there are things that could change everything?" Dana tensed up. A note of alarm crept into her voice. "What are you talking about?" "Nothing specific. Everyone has secrets." She turned away, and Eli noticed the change in her expression. Something closed, almost frightened, appeared. "Yes, everyone has secrets," she repeated quietly. At the hospital, Dana worked as usual, but her colleagues began to notice something strange. She became nervous when the conversation turned to certain patients. She especially avoided the infectious disease ward. "Dana, can you help with the tests in Ward 7? Joan asked. "Can someone else do it? I have a lot of work here." "But you specialized in infectious diseases in medical school. That was a long time ago." "I've forgotten a lot." Joan looked at her in surprise but didn't press the issue. After the senior nurse left, Dana sat down on a chair. feeling her heart pound. Some secrets are too dangerous to share, even with the person closest to you. Their romance had been going on for 2 months when the first serious setback occurred. Stefan came home early unexpectedly and didn't find his wife. Dana was at the car repair shop with Eli. "Where's Dana?" he asked his brother on the phone. Eli, who was lying next to Dana on the sofa in the workshop, felt his blood run cold. "How should I know? Probably at work." "I called the hospital. Her shift ended 2 hours ago." Dana gestured to Eli that she would speak. "Tell him you saw her drive to the supermarket," she whispered. "Maybe she went shopping?" Eli relayed. "Maybe. It's just strange that she didn't say anything." After the call, they quickly got dressed. The intimacy was marred by a sense of danger. "That was close," Eli said. "Too close. We need to be more careful." But instead of stopping, they became more inventive. They met in motels outside the city, took long trips under the pretext of work, and even met several times at Eli's house when Stefan was away on business. Their connection deepened not only physically, but emotionally. They talked about their dreams, fears, and plans for the future. Eli talked about his desire to open his own workshop in another city. Dana dreamed of working in a large hospital where her professionalism would be appreciated. "What if we could start all over again?" she asked one day, lying on his chest. "What do you mean?" "If we had met first, before I married Stefan." Eli thought about it. This thought often tormented him. A lot would have been different. Would we have been happy? I don't know, but at least we wouldn't feel like traitors. Dana paused, then said something that made Eli's ears perk up. "You know, there are some things you can't change, no matter how much you want to." "What are you talking about?" "Nothing. Just thinking." But Eli sensed that she was hiding something. A shadow flashed in her eyes, one he had seen more and more often. Eli woke up with a feeling that something was wrong. For the 3rd day in a row, he had been plagued by strange symptoms, a fever that rose and fell, swollen lymph nodes in his neck, and constant fatigue. At first, he blamed it on stress and lack of sleep due to the double life he had been leading for the past few months. Getting out of bed in his small apartment above a car repair shop, he looked at himself in the mirror. His face was gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes. Enlarged lymph nodes were visible on his neck, hard bumps under the skin that hurt when touched. "Probably just a cold," he muttered as he headed for the shower. But his intuition told him that it wasn't a cold. In his 29 years, he had been sick enough to know the difference between a common illness and something more serious. Working at the auto repair shop was hard. His hands were shaking, and he couldn't concentrate. When Dana showed up with his usual coffee at lunchtime, Eli could barely hide how he felt. "You look terrible," she said, studying his face closely. "Thanks for the compliment," he tried to joke. "Eli, I'm serious. Do you have a fever?" She instinctively reached out to touch his forehead, but he pulled away. "I'm fine, just tired." Dana frowned. As a nurse, she knew how to recognize the signs of illness. What she saw alarmed her. "Maybe you should see a doctor?" "No, I'm fine. It'll pass." "Eli." "I said no," he snapped. There was an aggression in his voice that Dana had never heard before. She backed away, but her concern remained. Something about his symptoms seemed familiar, uncomfortably familiar. The next day, Eli felt even worse. His temperature rose to 38.5 degrees Celsius, and a rash appeared on his chest. He could no longer ignore the symptoms. The Centennial Medical Clinic was small but modern. Dr. Elizabeth Wright, a physician with 20 years of experience, listened carefully to Eli's complaints. "When did the symptoms start?" she asked, making a note in his chart. "A week ago. At first I thought it was a cold." "Have you had any unprotected sex recently?" Eli froze. The question was standard for doctors, but it hit a raw nerve. "Yes, I have." "With a regular partner or different partners?" "One." But he couldn't say that the woman was his brother's wife. He couldn't admit that he had no idea about her sexual history. "When was the last time you were tested for sexually transmitted infections?" "A long time ago. 3 years ago, I think." Dr. Wright nodded and continued the examination. Enlarged lymph nodes, a rash, fever. The clinical picture was clear enough for an experienced doctor. "Mr. Allen, I need to take some blood for tests. The results will be ready in 2 days." "What kind of tests?" "A complete blood count, liver function tests, and an HIV test." The last words hit Ile like a bolt of lightning. HIV. He hadn't even considered that possibility. "Do you think I have it?" "I don't think anything for sure. We're just ruling out possible causes for your symptoms. An HIV test is standard procedure for complaints like yours." The next 2 days were hell for Eli. He couldn't work, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. His thoughts were jumbled, and one question kept spinning in his head. What if? Dana came every day, brought him food, tried to take care of him. But Eli pushed her away. He couldn't look at the woman who might be the cause of his illness. "What's going on?" she asked for the 3rd time that week. "You're acting strange." "Nothing's going on. Don't lie to me. We're too close for that." Eli smiled bitterly. Close. If only she knew how fatal that closeness could be. The call from the clinic came on Thursday morning. Dr. Wright's voice was professionally neutral. "Mr. Allen, could you come in today to discuss your test results? Can you tell me over the phone? It's better to discuss it in person." Eli's heart sank. Doctors usually give good news over the phone. Time seemed to stand still in Dr. Wright's office. She sat at her desk with his medical chart, and he waited for the verdict. "Mr. Allen, your HIV test came back positive." The words hit him like a gunshot. Eli felt the world around him begin to crumble. HIV. He had HIV. "Are you sure?" "Yes. We ran a confirmatory test. The result is positive." Dr. Wright continued to talk about viral load, modern treatments, and how HIV was no longer a death sentence. But Eli couldn't hear her. His head was buzzing and black spots danced before his eyes. "How?" he managed to say. "HIV is transmitted through unprotected sexual contact, through blood, from mother to child during childbirth. Given your symptoms and when they started, the infection occurred recently in the last 2 to 3 months." 2 to 3 months. That was exactly how long his affair with Dana had lasted. "You need to notify your partner about the need to get tested," the doctor continued. Eli nodded, not listening. Thoughts swirled in his head, each more terrifying than the last. Dana. Did she know? Did she infect him on purpose? Or did she not know her status herself? Leaving the clinic, Eli felt his legs give way beneath him. He sat down on a bench at the entrance and tried to collect his thoughts. HIV. He had HIV from the woman he loved, who was his brother's wife. His first impulse was to find Dana immediately and demand an explanation. But something held him back. It was a professional mechanic's habit to understand the problem first, then act. That evening, he sat in his apartment with a bottle of whiskey, trying to figure out what to do next. Dana's phone was ringing off the hook, but he didn't answer. He needed time to process what had happened. The next day, Dana burst into the auto repair shop unannounced. Her face was pale with worry. "Eli, what's going on? You're not answering your phone. You're not opening the door." He stood with his back to her, pretending to work on the engine. His hands were shaking so badly that he could barely hold the wrench. "I need to tell you something," he said without turning around. "What is it? You're scaring me." Eli slowly turned around. Dana saw something in his eyes that made her step back. "I have HIV." Silence hung between them like a guillotine blade. Dana turned even paler, and her eyes flashed with not only horror but also guilt. "What?" she whispered. "You heard me. I have HIV. I got it recently, in the last 2 or 3 months." His voice was cold as ice. "Do you know what that means?" Dana took another step back. Eli read the answer to his question in her behavior before she even spoke. "Eli, You knew?" he interrupted. The silence spoke louder than any words. "You knew," he shouted, throwing the key against the wall. "You knew and you didn't say anything." "I didn't think." "What didn't you think? That I wouldn't get infected? Or that I didn't need to know?" Dana began to cry. Tears streamed down her face, smearing her mascara. "I wanted to tell you. I wanted to tell you so many times, but I was afraid you'd leave me." "So you decided to infect me? To condemn me to the same life?" "No. I hoped nothing would happen." The chances of transmission aren't 100%. Eli grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her. Chances? You played with my life like it was roulette. Let me go. When did you find out? When? Dana sobbed. A year ago. After I slept with a patient at the hospital. He died a month later. A year ago? Eli couldn't believe his ears. You knew for a year, and all this time you were sleeping with Stefan? With my brother? We hardly ever had sex. And I made him use condoms. I told him I didn't want to get pregnant. What about with me? With you it was different. With you I felt alive. Eli pushed her away so hard she almost fell. Alive? You killed me. You took my life. HIV isn't a death sentence. There are drugs now. Shut up, he barked. Just shut up, Dana sobbed, pressing herself against the wall of the auto repair shop. Their beautiful love story had collapsed in an instant, exposing the ugly truth. Eli, please, I love you. You love me? He laughed bitterly. You don't know what love is. People who love each other don't kill each other. I didn't want to kill you. I just wanted to be happy, even if only for a little while. At my expense. At the expense of my life. He walked over to the workbench and picked up a heavy wrench. Dana instinctively backed away. Eli, what are you doing? Thinking about how to go on, how to look at myself in the mirror, how to explain to my brother that his wife is a murderer. You won't tell Stefan? Her voice sounded pleading, but Eli heard only selfishness. Why not? Let him know who he's living with. He could be infected too. If you tell him now, it will kill him. How did you kill me? Dana took a step toward him, reaching out her hands. Eli, we can fix this. We can fight this disease together, support each other. Together? He looked at her with disgust. You think I want to spend the rest of my life with the woman who betrayed me? Who condemned me to a life of suffering? It's not suffering. People with HIV live full lives. Shut up. You have no right to tell me how to live with the disease you gave me. The wrench in his hand seemed to grow heavier. Rage clouded his mind. He didn't see the woman he loved in front of him, but a traitor who had ruined his life. Go away, he said hoarsely. Eli. Go away before I do something I can't take back. Dana looked at the wrench in his hand and realized the joking was over. She slowly made her way to the door, looking back every few steps. I really loved you, she said at the door. And I really trusted you, Eli replied. See how wrong we both were. After she left, Eli was alone in the workshop. The wrench fell from his hands and hit the floor with a clang. He crouched down and covered his face with his hands. HIV, betrayal, a ruined life. And ahead of him lay the necessity of telling the truth to his brother, who would lose his wife and learn of the betrayal. The Allen family was doomed. But what tormented Eli most was one thought. What would he do with the rage that burned inside him like fire? How would he live knowing that the woman he loved had deliberately condemned him to such a fate? That evening, Eli drank himself into unconsciousness. But even alcohol couldn't drown out the voice in his head whispering, she has to pay. She has to pay for everything. Meanwhile, in the house on Maple Street, Dana sat in the bathroom staring at her antiretroviral pills. Stefan was asleep in the bedroom, unaware that his world was about to collapse. She took a pill and looked at herself in the mirror. What have I done? She whispered to her reflection, but it was too late for regrets. 3 days passed in agonizing silence. Eli didn't leave his apartment, locking himself in with a bottle of whiskey and dark thoughts. The phone was ringing off the hook. Dana was trying to get through. Stefan was worried about his brother who hadn't shown up for work, but Eli didn't answer anyone. Every sip of alcohol added fuel to the fire of his rage. Donna had deceived him, used him, and now he was doomed to live with an incurable disease. All his plans, all his dreams were buried, and she continued to live as if nothing had happened, coming home to an unsuspecting Stefan. On Saturday morning, Eli made a decision. He couldn't live with this rage inside him any longer. He needed to see Dana one more time, to tell her what he hadn't been able to say at the car repair shop. Maybe then the pain would subside. He sent her a message. Meet me at the old quarry at 8 p.m. We need to talk. The reply came almost instantly. I'll be there. The abandoned quarry 5 miles from Centennial had been their secret place at the beginning of their romance. They would meet there when the auto repair shop seemed too risky. The place was deserted. The mining company had closed the quarry 10 years ago, leaving only a deep pit filled with rainwater and a few dilapidated outbuildings. Eli arrived early to prepare for the conversation. In his jacket pocket was a knife, a regular pocket knife he used at work. He didn't take it with him to hurt anyone, just out of habit. Or so he told himself. Dana showed up right on time at 8. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, pale skin, trembling hands. The last few days had been hard for her, too. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," she said as she approached his car. Eli didn't answer. He silently headed for one of the abandoned buildings, an old shed where equipment was stored. Dana followed him. Inside the shed, it was cool and damp. The light of the setting sun filtered through the cracks in the walls, creating a strange play of shadows. Eli stopped in the middle of the room and turned to Dana. "Well, talk," he said coldly. "About what? About how you plan to fix this? About how you're going to get me back to health?" Dana lowered her eyes. "I can't fix it, I know." "So you just wanted to apologize? You think I'm sorry will change anything?" "No, I wanted to explain." "Explain what? How you hid your illness from your husband for a year? How you decided to infect me without warning?" Dana raised her head. Tears glistened in her eyes. "I didn't want to infect you. I didn't. I hoped it would pass." "Hoped?" Eli's voice grew louder. "You played Russian roulette with my life." I know how that sounds, but I was desperate. You were the only one who saw me as a woman, not a nurse or a housekeeper. And that justifies killing me?" "You're not going to die! HIV is treatable now." Eli took a step toward her. She saw such rage in his eyes that she instinctively backed away. "Curable? You think I'm comforted by the prospect of spending the rest of my life swallowing pills, living with the stigma of being sick, knowing that every partner will look at me like I'm a leper?" "Eli, what about Stefan? Did you tell your husband?" Dana shook her head. "No, I can't." "Can't or won't?" "Both. It would destroy him." "Like you destroyed me?" Eli took a knife out of his pocket and began to fiddle with it. Dana noticed and cowered even more. "What are you doing?" "Thinking about justice. About why you get to live in peace while I have to suffer. Killing me won't change anything. But it will be fair." Dana realized that the conversation was taking a dangerous turn. She slowly began to back away toward the door. "Eli, you're not a murderer. You're a good man. I was good, before I met you. Please, let's talk calmly. We can find a solution." "What solution? Are you offering me a trip back in time?" Eli opened the knife. The blade flashed in the dim light. "I didn't want it to turn out this way," Dana whispered. "But it did. And now someone has to pay. I cry every day. Do you think it's easy for me to live with this?" "Not enough. You're alive, and I'm doomed to a slow death." "That's not death. It's worse than death." Eli moved toward her, clutching the knife. Dana realized he was serious. She turned to run, but he grabbed her arm. "Let go." "No. You have to answer for what you did." Dana tried to break free, but Eli was stronger. They fell to the floor of the barn in a struggle. Dust and debris flew into the air. "Eli, stop! Think of Stefan. Stefan will find out the truth about his wife. He'll never forgive you." Those words stopped Eli for a moment. Stefan, his brother, who trusted him, who shared everything with him. How would he explain that he had killed his wife? But his rage was stronger than logic. All the months of guilt for betraying his brother, all the horror of the diagnosis, all the pain of realizing he had been deceived. It all came pouring out in a moment of madness. The knife entered Dana's body as easily as if it were butter. She screamed, but the sound was muffled by the thick walls of the barn. Blood gushed from the wound, staining her white blouse. "Eli," she croaked, looking at him in surprise. He stared at the knife in his hand, unable to believe what had happened. The blade was red with blood. "I didn't mean to," he began. But Dana couldn't hear him anymore. She lay on the dirty floor of the barn, life slowly leaving her body. Her eyes glazed over, and blood oozed from the corner of her mouth. Eli fell to his knees beside her. Dana! Dana! Talk to me! But it was too late. Dana Allen was dead. Eli spent the next few minutes in a daze. He sat next to the body of the woman he loved and killed. The reality of what had happened sank in slowly, like thick molasses. He had killed her. He was a murderer. Panic washed over him. What should he do now? How could he explain Dana's disappearance? How could he live with the knowledge that he was a murderer? His first impulse was to call the police and turn himself in, but his instinct for self-preservation was stronger. Eli began to think feverishly about how to hide the evidence of the crime. He wiped the knife on his jacket and folded it up. He looked at Dana's body. There was a lot of blood, but it hadn't splattered on the walls. Most of it had soaked into the ground beneath the shed floor. Dana's car was outside. He had to do something about it, and about the body. Eli remembered a deep quarry 100 meters from the shed. The water there was dark and cold. If he drowned the body there, he lifted Dana in his arms. She was lighter than he remembered. Death seemed to have taken not only her life, but also her weight. Carrying her to the quarry, he thought about how, just a few hours ago, these hands had caressed him, and these lips had whispered words of love. At the edge of the quarry, he stopped. Below, in the black water, the first stars were reflected. It was quiet, except for an owl hooting somewhere in the distance. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and threw the body into the water. Dana disappeared beneath the surface with a quiet splash. Eli stood at the edge, waiting for the body to float up, but it didn't. Apparently her clothes and shoes had pulled her down. Now he had to get rid of the car. Eli started it and drove along a forest road that led to another abandoned place, an old factory 20 miles from the quarry. There he left the car with the doors open and the windows smashed to make it look like a robbery. He didn't get home until dawn, taking a taxi. The driver didn't suspect anything. Drunk passengers who left their cars in the most unexpected places were a common occurrence in Centennial. In his apartment, Eli took a shower, trying to wash away the smell of death. But Dana's blood had seeped not only into his skin, but also into his soul. He knew that he would never be the same again. He threw his jacket and shoes into a dumpster outside the city. He took the knife apart and scattered the pieces in different places. It seemed that there were no traces left. But Eli had not taken one thing into account. On Monday morning, Dana did not show up for work. Joan, the head nurse, wasn't worried at first. Dana was sometimes late or ill, but by lunchtime, it was clear that something was wrong. Dana wasn't answering her phone, and she wasn't at home either. Stefan arrived at the hospital, worried. "When was the last time you saw her?" he asked Joan. "On Friday at the end of her shift. She seemed upset, but I didn't think anything of it." Stefan tried to call his wife, but her phone was off. There were no notes at home, and her things were still there. But her car was not in the garage. By Monday evening, when Dana still hadn't come home, Stefan called the police. The officer on duty took the missing person report without much enthusiasm. Adults have the right to disappear if they want to. But when Dana's car was found abandoned on Tuesday morning, the case was handed over to Detective Tom Harris. Tom Harris had been with the Centennial Police Department for 20 years. He had seen it all, but disappearances always intrigued him, especially when it came to young women from good families. After examining the car, Harris immediately realized that something was wrong. The broken windows and open doors looked too deliberate. If it had been a robbery, the thieves would have taken the radio and the navigation system, but they were still there. "Someone wants us to think it's a robbery," he said to his partner, Detective Johnson. "Or Mrs. Allen wants us to think something happened to her," he suggested. "Maybe, but why?" Harris questioned the missing woman's husband. Stefan Allen looked like a man who genuinely didn't understand what was going on. "Did your wife ever talk about wanting to leave, to start a new life?" "Never. Dana loved her job. We had a good relationship." "Financial problems?" "None. We live modestly, but we don't need anything." "Other men?" Stefan frowned. "What do you mean?" "Mr. Allen, in cases of missing women, extramarital affairs are often involved. Dana didn't have any affairs. She wasn't like that." Harris wrote down the answer, but experience told him that husbands were often the last to know about their wives' infidelities. A survey of Dana's colleagues at the hospital also yielded no results. Everyone spoke of her as a professional, reliable person. However, several nurses noted that Dana had seemed happier in recent months, but then became gloomy again. "It was as if she had fallen in love and then become disillusioned," said one of them. This intrigued Harris. A secret affair could explain a lot. On the third day of his search, the detective decided to talk to Dana's relatives. She only had a brother in a neighboring state who knew nothing, but her husband's family was nearby. Eli Allen met the detective at a car repair shop. He looked nervous, which Harris noted in his observations. "When was the last time you saw Dana?" the detective asked. "Last Wednesday, I think, or Thursday. She came by about the car." "What did she look like?" "Normal, maybe a little tired." "Are you close with your sister-in-law?" Eli flinched as if he had been struck. "What do you mean, close?" "Well, do you talk often? Does she confide in you?" "We get along fine. She's my brother's wife." Harris sensed tension in Eli's voice. Something wasn't right here. "Mr. Allen, where were you on Saturday night?" "At home, drinking beer, watching TV." "Can anyone confirm that?" "No, I live alone." After talking to Eli, Harris had his suspicions. His brother-in-law's behavior seemed strange to him, too nervous for someone who was just worried about a missing relative. But these were only suspicions. He needed proof, and there was none. Dana Allen's body lay at the bottom of the quarry, and Eli believed it would never surface. But he didn't count on one thing: the fishermen who knew about the abandoned quarry and sometimes came there to catch big fish. On Thursday morning, 2 local fishermen discovered a body floating near the far shore of the quarry. Decomposition gases brought it to the surface, despite the heavy clothing. When Harris arrived at the scene, he immediately realized that this was no longer a missing person case, but a murder. The knife wound was clearly visible even to a layman. Forensic investigators worked at the crime scene all Friday. The quarry was cordoned off with yellow tape, and divers thoroughly searched the bottom for clues. Dana Allen's body was taken to the morgue for an autopsy, which was expected to shed light on the circumstances of her death. Detective Tom Harris stood on the shore of the quarry and tried to piece together what had happened. The abandoned location, the deep water, the attempt to hide the body, everything pointed to the killer knowing the area. Most likely, it was a local. "What are the forensic experts saying?" he asked his partner, Johnson. "1 stab wound to the heart. Death was quick from blood loss. No signs of sexual assault. The killer used a knife with a blade about 4 inches long." "Time of death?" "Judging by the condition of the body, 4 to 5 days ago. That fits with Saturday when she was last seen." Harris nodded. Saturday. That was the day he had spoken to Eli Allen, who claimed to have spent the evening at home alone. No alibi. "What did you find at the bottom?" "Nothing significant so far. A few beer cans, some old tires. The divers are continuing their search." The detective decided to talk to the family again. Stefan Allen was in shock over the news of his wife's death. When Harris told him the news, the man just sat down on the couch and stared at one spot. "Killed?" he asked again. "Who could have killed Dana?" "That's what we're trying to find out." "Mr. Allen, think back. Was there anything unusual about your wife's behavior lately?" Stefan struggled to focus on the question. "She was tense. The last few weeks, I thought it was problems at work." "Did she mention any conflicts? People who might have threatened her?" "No. Dana was kind. She had no enemies." Harris wrote down the answers, but felt that Stefan wasn't telling him everything. Perhaps he simply didn't know about his wife's secret life. "I'll need to look through her things. Her computer, her phone, if you can find it." "The phone is gone with her. The computer is in the bedroom." A search of Dana's personal belongings gave Harris a few clues. In her browser history, he found searches for information about HIV, antiretroviral therapy, and ways to transmit the virus. The most recent searches were from 2 weeks ago. In the bedroom, in a hiding place behind the mirror, the detective found a package of HIV medication addressed to Dana Allen. The prescription had been written a year ago by a doctor in a neighboring town. "Mr. Allen, did you know your wife had HIV?" Harris asked. Stefan turned pale as a ghost. What? That's impossible. She had medication. She's been undergoing treatment for a year. I didn't know anything. How could she hide this from me? Stefan's voice was filled with pain and confusion. Harris realized that the husband really had no idea. You'll need to get tested, and if your wife had other partners, they need to get tested too. There were no other partners, Stefan snapped. Dana was a faithful wife. But Harris already had his doubts. HIV infection, secret medication, secrecy in recent months. Everything pointed to an affair. And if her lover found out about her illness, the next step was to investigate the victim's surroundings in more detail. Harris returned to the hospital and conducted detailed interviews with Dana's colleagues. She changed about 3 months ago, said Nurse Linda. She became happier, took more care of her appearance. We even joked that she had a lover. And then she became gloomy again, nervous, especially in the last 2 weeks. Was she seeing anyone at the hospital? No, everyone knows each other here. We would have noticed. Harris wrote down the statement. The timeline matched his theory. The affair had started 3 months ago, and 2 weeks ago something had happened that ruined everything. Perhaps the lover had found out about the HIV. That evening, the detective decided to talk to Eli Allen again. Something about his brother-in-law's behavior was bothering him. Eli was at the car repair shop when Harris arrived. He had lost a lot of weight over the past few days. His eyes were sunken, and his hands were shaking. Alcohol and nervous tension were taking their toll. Mr. Allen, I have a few more questions. I've already told you everything. Did you know your sister-in-law was HIV positive? Eli spun around, dropping the wrench. His reaction was too strong for someone who knew nothing. HIV? Where did she get that? She'd been getting treatment for a year. She kept it from her husband. I didn't know. But Harris saw the lie in his eyes. Eli knew, and he had known for a long time. Where were you on Saturday evening between 7 and 10? I told you, at home. No one can confirm that? No. Mr. Allen, have you been ill recently? Have you had any tests done? Eli froze. That question hit home. What tests? The usual ones? Or special ones? For infections, for example? No. A lie. Harris was sure of it. He decided to check local clinics. At Centennial Medical Clinic, Dr. Elizabeth Wright initially refused to provide patient information, citing medical confidentiality. But when Harris explained that he was investigating a murder, she agreed to cooperate. Eli Allen came to me 2 weeks ago complaining of a fever and swollen lymph nodes, she said. The tests showed HIV. How did he react to the diagnosis? Hard. He was in shock. He asked how he could have gotten it. Did he name the source of the infection? He said he had a steady partner, but he didn't give a name. Harris felt he was close to a breakthrough. Eli had contracted HIV from Dana and found out 2 weeks ago, just when Dana had become nervous and withdrawn. The motive for murder was clear, but he needed hard evidence. Harris decided to search Eli's home. The search took place on Saturday morning. Eli was nervous, pacing around the apartment, smoking one cigarette after another. The forensic experts methodically examined every corner. They found torn photographs in the trash can. When they were glued back together, they turned out to be pictures of Eli and Dana embracing. Judging by the background, the photos had been taken at a car repair shop. Can you explain these photos? Harris asked. Eli looked at the photos silently. His alibi was crumbling before his eyes. It's not what you think. What is it then? We were just talking. She was upset, so I gave her a friendly hug. And that's why the photos are torn? Eli didn't answer. Harris saw fear in his eyes. In the bedroom, forensic experts found clothes with traces of blood, small stains on the cuff of a shirt that Eli apparently didn't notice when he washed it. Where did the blood come from? I cut myself at work, it happens a lot. We'll check whose blood it is. The blood test took 3 days. The results confirmed Harris's suspicions. The blood belonged to Dana Allen. On Tuesday morning, Eli was arrested. When his rights were read to him, he didn't resist. He even seemed relieved. Eli spent a sleepless night in his holding cell. His lawyer advised him to remain silent, but the weight of his guilt was tearing him apart. The next day, he asked to speak to Detective Harris. "I want to tell you the truth," he said. "I'm listening. I killed Dana, but not the way you think." Eli told the whole story from the beginning. About the secret affair, about how Dana hid her HIV status, about his rage when he found out the truth, about the meeting at the quarry and what happened in the barn. "I didn't plan to kill her. I just wanted to talk. But when I realized she'd been lying to me for a year, that she'd condemned me to this life, I don't remember how it happened. I woke up and she was already dead. Why did you decide to hide the body?" "I was scared. I realized what I had done and panicked. I'm not a murderer, detective. Or at least I wasn't before that night." Harris listened to the confession and felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and pity. The case had been solved, but there were no winners here. Stefan had to learn the whole truth at once, about his wife's illness, her affair with his brother, and the murder. The man couldn't take the blow. He took time off work and didn't leave the house for a week, trying to make sense of the collapse of his entire life. "How could I not have noticed anything?" he asked himself. "How could they have deceived me for so long?" Tests showed that Stefan was not HIV positive. Dana had indeed forced him to use condoms under the pretext of not wanting to get pregnant. But this news brought no relief. The betrayal of his wife and brother was too painful. Eli gave a full confession, recounting every detail of the crime. He led investigators to the shed where the murder took place. Forensic experts found traces of blood that Eli had not been able to completely clean up. "Why did you decide to confess?" Harris asked during one of the interrogations. "Because it's impossible to live with this. I killed the woman I loved. Yes, she cheated on me, infected me, ruined my life. But she didn't deserve to die." "Do you regret it?" Eli was silent for a long time. "I regret killing her, but I don't regret the rage I felt. She really ruined my life, and Stefan's life too." The trial took place 6 months later. Eli Allen pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. He did not contest the charges or ask for leniency. The prosecutor spoke of the brutality of the crime, the attempts to cover up the evidence, and the lies told to investigators. The defense attorney spoke of provocation and the psychological state of the defendant, who had learned of his terminal illness. Stefan came to court. He sat in the courtroom and looked at his brother, whom he no longer recognized. Eli had aged in those months, become gaunt, with a dead emptiness in his eyes. "The defendant has the last word," said the judge. Eli stood up. He looked at Stefan, then at Dana's family, who had also come to the trial. "I want to say that I regret what happened. Dana didn't deserve to die despite what she did. I destroyed several lives with one act. I took her life, broke my brother's heart, and caused pain to her family. No punishment can fix that." The judge sentenced Eli Allen to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. After the sentence was announced, Stefan approached his brother. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why couldn't you just come to me and tell me the truth?" "Because I'm a coward," Eli replied, "and because I loved her, no matter what." The brothers hugged each other for the last time. Stefan knew he would never see Eli again. The Allen family was no more. A year later, Stefan sold his house and auto repair shop and left Centennial. He couldn't live in a town where every corner reminded him of the tragedy. A new life in another state offered hope for healing, but the scars on his soul would remain forever. Detective Harris closed the case, but he couldn't forget the story for a long time. 3 lives were destroyed because of lies, betrayal, and an inability to tell the truth. Family secrets proved deadly. In prison, Eli began treatment for HIV. The disease that had led to the murder now reminded him of what he had done every day. He read books, worked in the library, and avoided other inmates. Loneliness became both his punishment and his salvation. The Allen family's story became a warning to the residents of Centennial. It showed how dangerous family secrets can be, how lies lead to tragedy, and how one wrong decision can destroy many lives. The town remembered this story for a long time, passing it on as a lesson that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a lie.